Episode 79. October 1979 was a historic month. On October 10th, 1979, the Edmonton Oilers and Wayne Gretzky both played their first game in the NHL. And just 4 days before that, on October 6th, the Fed chair Paul Volcker made a surprise announcement that monetary policy would be dictated by controlling bank reserves rather than the Fed funds rate. In an attempt to control inflation, this eventually led to the Fed funds rate reaching 20% in 1980 until inflation was eventually tamed in 1982, leading to a period of sustained growth for the United States. Beyond MD, episode 79, here we go! Hey everyone, welcome back to Beyond MD. So I'm starting a segment of the podcast featuring journeys of our fellow colleagues. It is Beyond MD Physician Journeys. Today we're going to kick it off with an interview featuring Dr. Neel Chadha, who is a family doctor based out of Ottawa and Perth. He is also an entrepreneur. Many years back, he co-founded the Lanark Retirement Residences in Perth. He made a very conscious decision to go all in on senior living and develop retirement residences. Neel has been very recognized for his efforts. Last year, he was recognized as the top 40 under 40 in the Ottawa region. His story is a very inspiring one. I've been following Neel for a number of years now. It's a story about taking on new challenges, taking on calculated risks, going all in, and living life with no regrets. I really hope you enjoy my interview with Neel Chadha. Neel, welcome to Beyond MD. I'm really excited to have you here today. So, guys, this is Neel Chadha. We're not actually related. We have the same last name. But we connected several years ago on LinkedIn, and I became very captivated, Neel, by what you were doing. You're a doctor with many other interests, but welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Yathan. And I would like to just do a little start here with, really appreciating and giving you gratitude for what you do to the medical community. I started listening to you early on, and the topics you talk about are so pertinent and relevant, and I think they're the most relevant now in the time we are in society. So I really appreciate that.
Hey man, that's very, very kind words. I really do genuinely appreciate what you just said. So Neel, maybe give us a little bit of background on who you are and what your main areas of focus are in life, and then we can kind of pick away at it.
Sounds good. So I'm born and raised in Ottawa. Dad was a physician. I think your dad's a physician as well. Mm-hmm. So some similarities there. Definitely, a sister's a physician. So it was in the family, and initially I kind of rebelled against it, but decided to embrace it, and went into medical school in Calgary. Met some really cool people there. Came back, did family medicine in Ottawa. And I always had a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit to me and loved reading books about business guys, and also had a bit of a background in real estate. But I started working as a physician, mainly in long-term care, retirement, and hospitals. Those were kind of my main areas of interest. Mm-hmm. Really gravitated towards care of the elderly. And I remember working in about 10 different retirement homes at one point, including some long-term care as well, and saying, hey, look, I want to build one of these things. I think I could, offer some value here. And went ahead and built a retirement home as well as a senior apartment building in Perth. And that's kind of my main focus right now.
Super interesting. So some similarities there, as you mentioned. Our dads are both doctors. My sister, I have one sister, she's a physician as well. We got the same last name. But you somehow started to think about things related to entrepreneurship earlier. Where did that bug for entrepreneurship come? That's what I really am interested to know. Because I can tell you, for me, it was tunnel vision medicine. Right. I had no bugs, and I kind of wish I did. And I feel like I'm catching up now. But where did that interest come for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. To be honest, I feel lucky in that I've always had the think outside the box, think about things differently type of mentality. And I maybe I was just born with it. But as a kid on the playground, always thinking about different types of skills and, talk about collectibles like marbles or pogs, or just always try to, make deals, for the lack of a better term there. But yeah, I've always had it. And I really aspired to learn more about significant, for me, business people in our world and the world we live in, what types of, objects we use or things we consume and what stems behind that. So that's where that comes from, I guess.
And you're a Michael Jordan fan too, right? Like I like your background right now. Okay. That's
I
great,
am.
man.
Yeah.
So, okay, you practiced as a family doctor, but you had an interest in the elderly, in geriatrics, and then you decided, well, maybe I'm going to build a home for seniors. Like to me, that combination, that intersection just seems like a match made in heaven. But I can tell you that most people who are practicing medicine with a focus on geriatrics probably don't think like that. So, can you tell me how this interest in like getting into senior living developed?
Sure. Well, I do remember pretty vividly my first steps into a retirement home, and that was in Calgary,
Mhm.
first year of medical school. And I was just amazed because I was a victim of the stigma associated with long-term care and these types of things to a degree, and I thought, there's definitely a need for long-term care, don't get me wrong, but there is a way to age with dignity and, also try and preserving lifestyle as much as possible. And I think that's what the retirement home that I was in Calgary really modeled. And so fast forward 10, 15 years later, I was working in a bunch of different retirement homes. And I said, hey, wait a second. They didn't really have the same sort of model that I saw back in Calgary and thought I'd like to replicate that. And I thought also just knowing some of the medical side of it, advanced directives, different medications, deprescribing, all that. I thought we could, have a lot of synergies from my medical background as well as my sort of flair for business.
That's amazing. And then Neil, let's fast forward a little bit. I recall one of your LinkedIn posts. So one thing I want to mention, I don't see you on LinkedIn that much, which I kind of respect in a way. But when you do post, man, you've got some great traction. Like, and to me, that just says one, you're a good writer. You're a very good writer. I think the way you share stories is very engaging for people. And then two, I get a sense that the people you have in your network, which we're going to talk about later, I I think they're all very fond of you. Like they probably have a lot of respect for you. You have amazing traction. There was one post in particular that you maybe shared earlier this year. I don't want to get the dates wrong, but it started off with, "I'm stepping out of the hospital," and that really got my eye. And then you talked about you made a conscious decision to leave work in the hospital and really go all in on senior living. Can you talk to us about that decision? Like, why did you do it? And what were some of the factors that you took into account to make that big decision?
Sure. I'd like to preface that by saying it was probably one of the most difficult decisions I've had to make in my life because you dedicate so much time and to medicine and I was passionate and still am about medicine, and the hospital for me was really the anchor of my medical career. I let go of things like primary care and things like that, but I always kept the hospital around because I enjoyed it. I really did. I enjoyed the teaching aspect. I would always have a team of 4 residents. I enjoyed that, like 95% of my patients were the elderly, so I was doing really good things. But the reason I decided to let go was just because I deeply believe that my impact on kind of Canadian healthcare in general is likely, the most if I'm doing what I'm doing with senior living, because it allows me to hopefully help offload some of the strain on the system. Obviously, it's more of a, private type of approach, but I do think there's a need for it because, if the elderly can stay in homes like the ones that I have and have created, then there's not as much strain on the long-term care health system as well as the hospitals. And so I just felt like the most impact I was able to have would be in senior living. And I thought I was in a position kind of financially as well as support from my family, my wife, that now was the time to do it.
That's amazing. And I think all those reasons really resonate with me. What really stands out to me is your desire to have impact and figuring out what's the best way to go about that and really be of service to people. Because I think that's what, in my view, that's what makes things sustainable. So I love all that. Now, tell us about, I want to make sure I pronounce the name of your home properly. Is it Lanark or Lanark? What's the best way to say it?
Lanark, yep.
Lanark, yeah. So tell us about Lanark. Like how big is it? You mentioned you serve the area of Perth, but just give us a quick overview on that.
Sure. So Lanark Lifestyles is the official name of our retirement community. And I have a business partner who actually wrote an article on how to build a retirement home. And he's
Oh
a
yeah.
pharmacist. He's a geriatric pharmacist. So
Wow.
so that's been, I can't kind of stress how important that's been for me just to have him as he's a few years older than me as a mentor. And so he and I came up with this vision of creating this 7-acre campus. And it consists of retirement home, which has 102 aging in place units. So you can move in, you kind of get your meals provided, and then you never have to move out. Like we really stress the importance of being able to care for someone until the end. And then that was built in 2019, and we were lucky enough to have it filled within a year. And we basically then expanded and built a 115 unit luxury apartment for seniors with a clubhouse that has like a yoga studio, a huge gym, swimming pool, pickleball courts, lots of different walking paths, planting beds, just a really nice community.
Yeah.
So that we finished a year ago, and lease up has been going well there. And then we also sold the corner lot to a colleague in Perth who has developed a state-of-the-art medical center. So it's a really nice campus now.
Oh, okay. Wow. So it's basically like a campus with senior living, and there's healthcare right beside it as well, like a big, like a robust clinic. Yeah.
Oh, robust clinic with physio, pharmacy. There's blood lab coming in, like home care, all sorts of different things. So yeah.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. By the way, I've seen the photos and videos that you've uploaded from time to time, and I have to say, Lanark, the facility that you've created, it looks amazing. It looks
Thank
really, really nice. So job well done there. Now, I want to understand from you as somebody who's in this sector of senior living, just give us a rundown of the industry. Because my dad, quick backstory. So he was a family doctor and practiced for many years, and he also had this vision. And it was, somewhat similar to you, but he wanted to have an impact outside of the hospital. So he created a retirement home in Amherst, just out of Kingston. Ended up selling that in 2022. But one of the things he actually did was the main entry street to that facility he named after his dad, who passed many, many years ago. But it was just this lifelong dream that he had. And through talking to him, I did learn a little bit about the industry, the supply, the demand. But I always like to get the perspective of somebody who's living and breathing this every day. So can you educate us a little bit on senior living? What is the status quo in Canada, like supply, demand? We have a very aging population. I'd love to hear your perspectives.
Sure. So to start with, it's a challenging sector, in terms of over the years from sort of a pure business perspective. There has been a lot of supply entering the market because big institutions think of what we call the silver tsunami or this aging demographic tailwind, and as a result, there's been a lot of supply, and the demand hasn't kept up or caught up just yet, especially with the lower interest rates, during the pandemic. We're now seeing demand catch up, but it was a scary time for the last sort of 4 years or so. But the next 30 to 40, maybe even more years are very, very favorable. Just to give you one stat, the amount of seniors greater than 75 from 2005 to 2025, they'll be, that number grew by 1 million. But now that same number, this is in Canada, it's going to grow by 1 million every 5 years for the next 20.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so
Wow.
yeah, so we're really going to see an increase in demand, and all of the forecasters in the industry don't think so. That they don't think supply will keep up, but who knows?
I'd like to take a minute to talk about a company that I've been following for a few years now. I initially met them on this very podcast and was taken by their story and passion to make life better for doctors. Introducing Aria Health, the groundbreaking electronic health records company that's redefining the way doctors practice medicine. Aria Health is all about putting doctors back in the driver's seat, in control of your destiny to become the doctor you've always aspired to be. Aria Health is not your typical EHR company. They're all about keeping the focus where it belongs, on you and your patients. They want to empower you to be caring, present, efficient, and powerful in your medical practice, without the burden of endless note-taking and paperwork. Join the Aria Health community of doctors who are already taking back their lives and practicing medicine the way they were meant to, free of corporate shackles, one patient at a time. But that's not all. Your time is precious and you want to get back to what truly matters. Aria's unique promise is to get you up and running as a new clinic in less than 30 days. And if you're thinking about integrations or migrations, don't worry. Aria can get you set up in less than 2 months so you can seamlessly transition without missing a beat. What sets Aria Health apart is their unwavering commitment to helping doctors thrive and making doctors the heroes of the healthcare story. They leverage the power of artificial intelligence, handling complex data ingestion and automating workflows so you can focus on patient care, not paperwork. And I've seen this in action myself. Visit ariaehr.com, that's ARYAEHR.com, and discover how Aria can empower you to take charge of your medical practice. You can use a special code BeyondMD to get your first month for free. Okay, as somebody who likes to learn about this industry, it's an industry I read about from time to time, one that I invest in myself. What would you say are some of the key metrics if somebody wants to keep a pulse on what's happening? Is it occupancy? Is it stats related to demographics? Like what can we do as people who are interested to continue to learn about this sector?
Sure. And I know of some deals that have gone on with physicians helping with some of the equity, payments and then getting a bit of a waterfall, things like that. So what I would recommend for anybody who's kind of entering in any deal is, obviously you're going to be told something during the presentation because the presentation is likely trying to captivate you and entice you to invest. But I would encourage you to do your own homework, and it's not hard. One thing is, regional demographics. So you go on the census website. This is actually how I ended up picking Perth as my first location. You go on the internet and you type in Perth, Ontario demographics. So you basically see how many seniors, so greater than 65 years old, for example. You can also further characterize that into 75 or 85. Typically in the retirement homes, the average age is above 85, just as a thing to be aware of. But yeah, so you check those numbers and you check what the trajectory is going to be in the next 4 or 5 years as well. Perth and Almont, in the Ottawa area are very, very favorable with regards to those numbers. And then you check household income as well. And this might be a bit too sophisticated, but like you said, really it's about occupancy. And new products. So, if you're going to invest in a deal, check what the occupancy is of the current product in the area, because there's places like Southwestern Ontario where occupancy is like extremely high. And then Ottawa for the last 2 or 3 years was actually quite low. So you want to check that. And then you also want to try and get a pulse on how much new supply is coming to that area, because if there's a lot of new supply coming, then there's going to be a lot of competition.
That's a great summary, Neel. Let's talk about interest rates. So interest rates slowly coming down now, but have been high for a few years. And I also recall that you had mentioned that 2023 was a year of challenges for yourself. So on the business front, the business was expanding, interest rates were really, really high. And then I believe you welcomed your first child, right?
I did.
Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you're now a human dad and a dog dad, which is pretty cool. But that was a year of challenges, but yet you seem to have overcome that really, really well, because I also saw that you were recognized as a recipient of the Top 40 Under 40 Award for Ottawa. So congratulations on that too.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it was a challenging year. And I find having a child drastically changed my perspective and outlook on life. More than I even thought it would. But at that point, it was too late to back out of my extension. So yeah, just to give you a bit of context, I am the type of guy that tends to double down on myself and take risks and these types of things. But obviously when it's just you're it's okay. And to be honest, medicine's been great for me because I know that I can take risks at a certain point in my life, and if things don't go well, I always have medicine to fall back on. And I really appreciate that. And I feel really lucky, and I plan on practicing some sort for hopefully indefinitely. But that's just something I wanted to add. But yeah, so basically interest rates were climbing, construction costs were climbing, and occupancy wasn't climbing for my new expansion, which was the 115 unit luxury apartment. Like, we penciled our pro forma at about 2% interest, and we were actually 4 times that. 8% is what we ended up having to pay. So basically, there was millions of dollars of interest that we didn't have and we didn't pencil in, but we pivoted. The banks were kind to us. I pivoted and put more time in terms of the lease up and these types of things, and it all worked out. But it really, I think my lesson learned there was, now that I have a family and things like that, I don't think it's worth taking that much risk moving forward.
That's really useful perspective. I can tell you, Neel, that the interest rates, I think they've impacted everybody. I felt the impact as well because every property that I own, I was under a variable rate mortgage. And I think if there's one thing that I maybe learned, I was going variable simply for the flexibility and understanding that over the long term, I'm probably going to end up on top. But I think one thing I learned also was to maybe diversify my interest rate risk as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, for you, I guess, any lessons in terms of, and I've also done this when I've done my own performas on investments, I found sometimes I didn't really give myself enough of a margin of safety. I was projecting, I did not factor in interest rates going this high, and it hurt some of my investments. But can you speak to that as well? Like, it sounds like you guys did fine, but what did you kind of learn there in terms of like margin of safety, projections, and things like that?
Are you a fan of Morgan Housel, by the way?
I am.
Yeah.
I haven't read his second book, but Psychology of Money, I'm a big fan of.
Yeah, so I keep some of his quotes on my little page here in front of my computer. Just because it got me through. It got me through. So one of the things was, margin of safety is one of the most underappreciated forces in finance, right? It basically just raises the odds of success at a given level of risk by increasing your chances of survival. So that's what I tell myself. And thank you, Morgan Housel, for those quotes. But really, you nailed it, Yathin. Like, basically, you need to survive. Like, that's rule number one. And I think it's similar in investing as well. If you lose everything, then you can't survive, and then when the good times are coming, you can't really take advantage of that. No. So for me, what I've learned absolutely is, how much I want to play with, call it, is significantly less than what I initially thought I would, because you need the margin of safety for a rainy day.
You've clearly done really well, but I think that to do well in whatever you have set out to do, you need to focus on that endeavor. You've talked about this before, and I think we had maybe a Zoom call that was a year or two ago, and I think on that call you were telling me that you were considering maybe starting a blog, starting a podcast, but then I learned through some of your writing that you had foregone those pursuits to really focus in on senior living. Can you talk about this? Because I think it's really underappreciated, like why living a focused life is so important. And then maybe talk about like what kind of steps do you put in place for yourself to make sure you live that focused life?
Yeah, absolutely. I found whenever I'm the most effective at accomplishing my goals, whatever they may be, it's usually because I'm focused, and it's usually because my goals are finite in a certain period of time. There's a really nice quote that I heard once, and it was, you can have it all, but not all at once. So you really have to space out what you want to do in a certain given period of time. And I mean, as physicians in the network, like we've done that, right? Like getting into medical school, that was a pretty focused goal, and we had to hone in on that. So after building the retirement home and having some success there, sometimes it can get to your head a little bit. And I thought, oh, maybe I could do this in multiple businesses. And as a result of that idea, I thought I would have a holding company, and I would have a podcast that would basically just explain the different businesses and talk about other aspects of entrepreneurship. But I'm the type of guy that has to do things and then realize, okay, is it too much or too little? So I actually talked to you, Yat, and then you said, just go for it, try it out. And I really appreciate that advice. And you kind of gave me your playbook on, Riverside FM, what type of mic to buy, all these types of things.
Yeah.
And so I had 2 episodes, and then I realized that the holding company and different multiple businesses, I wasn't as passionate about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you've said this before in your podcast, but if passion drives you, then I think you'll be okay. And in my mind, my passion really is senior living. So if you can find what you're passionate about, I think the rest sort of takes care of itself.
I love that. That's very powerful. And Neel, to get to where you are and where we all are, we need to meet the right people. Like we need mentors in our lives. And I think that brings up this concept of networking. Like people throw that word around very loosely sometimes, and we all say that it's important, but maybe talk about like who have been the mentors in your lives, or why has networking been so important for you?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of intentional networking.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a little bit different from, I guess, social networking or, and what I mean by intentional, I think if you have a goal that you want to accomplish, I think it kind of starts with goal setting, and once you know what you're trying to do, and that could be personal goal, financial, career, health and family. It could be any of those things. But then you need to figure out who's done that before, and do you like kind of some sort of an idol or person? It doesn't have to be. It could be Warren Buffett, but it could be someone like Warren Buffett on a smaller scale, right? And then you try to set out to meet that person. And to me, I was never afraid of cold calling, whether it be really successful business people or someone like yourself that I needed advice from. I come at it through a very sincere, curious, sincere, and inspired lens. Like I look at someone who's done good things, and to be honest, it makes me really happy to see that. And I just like to learn from those types of people like yourself. And so I just say, hey, look, love what you're doing. I really actually gravitate towards your podcast. Can I ask you a few questions, or can we do a Zoom sometime?
That's great, Neel. I really appreciate those words, but I can tell you, like, I have been learning a lot from you over the years, like following you and even on today's conversation. Now, one thing I will try and do is if I'm having a conversation with somebody and I think they may have knowledge in the space that I'm interested in, like today I recorded a podcast with somebody about corporations, CPP, salary, and dividends. And I said, well, I'm thinking about recording a podcast on this topic. Do you know somebody I can connect with? So I find that strategy, just asking upfront somebody who may be knowledgeable in that space, like who can I talk to? And that way, I think you get a little additional benefit from the conversation as well. Because otherwise, I find it really difficult to network with the right people. I've often wondered, like, I wish there was an app that I could just kind of look up. Hey, I'm looking at learning about small cap stocks or small cap ETFs. Like, who can I find in this space? Like, do you have any strategies for like navigating kind of the that network soup and like where to find the right mentors? Because I struggle with it from time to time.
Yeah, I like to present myself at different conferences, that are focused on whatever industry you're trying to learn more about. Like when I started in the retirement home space, I went to 4 conferences in 1 year. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, most everybody laughed in my face that I was going to do it. But one guy said, okay, if you want to do it, this is what you need to do. And that to me really resonated, because he was like, you either have to find somebody that's got really deep pockets or find somebody that's done it before and really learn from them. And I found a guy who had deep pockets and had done it before. So, but otherwise you don't really know who to look for or what to do. So yeah, I feel like really trying to, it's that learning by osmosis, just putting yourself, close to whatever it is you're trying to learn about. If it's small caps, I'm sure there's like different chat plate like Reddit, and I'm not entirely sure where, but just trying to get yourself closer to those types of resources.
So when it's all said and done, what do you want people to say about you and Lanark, the company you've built? What do you guys want to be known for?
I think we want to be known for giving seniors in Canada, the opportunity to age with dignity and grace, and to celebrate their lives and lifestyles, and still do things for the first time. Obviously seniors have so much wisdom to impart on younger generations, but that doesn't mean they have to stop living. So, we have lots of different types of bus trips and these types of things where seniors end up doing things they've never done. But yeah, I think really that's what we want to be known for.
I love it. And Neel, as we wrap up, anything else, any closing thoughts that you want to share with people? If so, feel free.
I'd like to just share some thoughts about, physicians, and I know your network's a lot of physicians, and just the worry of potentially burning out and these types of things. I found that I was at some points in my career close to that, and just pursuing things maybe outside of medicine, just to know that you have balance. I know you're a big fan of the book Balance, and I would just reiterate there's a lot of different things you can do outside of medicine, as well as different things within medicine, just to make sure you're still being effective, because I know it can be quite monotonous, and that's just something I thought I would like to add.
I think that's really relevant, Neel. I totally agree with that. I find that when I'm doing different things, I'm exercising my mind in a different way. And I find that life becomes much more enjoyable. Speaking of focused work, I know you're big on that. And so I just read this book, actually 10 pages left. It's Deep Work by Cal Newport. I don't know if you've come across this one.
I haven't.
But this book was phenomenal. And he actually, it's evidence-based as well. He goes over some studies and just his observations over time. But there was one segment in the book, and I'm trying to find it, but it was basically this individual he was kind of studying from back in the day. It must have been like the 18th or 19th century. But he also kind of said, like, you've got your work day, but then sometimes we say that the hours outside of work, well, they're maybe not as important. I don't have to fill up those hours with things that are, as challenging or as meaningful. But if you take a different look and you say, like, okay, your work day is just one segment of your day, but then the hours before and after are equally important. And if you invest into self-improvement in those hours and do different things, even though you're doing more things, you're doing different things, and you can, through that, have a much more enjoyable life. But that really hit me hard. But this is a great book, Deep Work by Cal Newport. You might enjoy it too.
Appreciate that. And that's, a pretty wise statement for sure.
Neel, I just want to thank you, man. I was really looking forward to this, and I really enjoyed talking to you today and learning about what you're doing. And I'm really happy for you, man. You're doing great things. You're achieving success, and I wish you the best going forward.
Thank you, and right back at you.
Okay, man. Take care. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that one. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. We will be doing more physician interviews to hear about the very inspiring journeys of so many of our colleagues. And before the holidays kick in, I'm hoping to wrap it up with about maybe 3 more episodes. So I hope you tune in, and if you feel so inclined, if you can share the podcast with anyone else in your network you think would enjoy it, I'll be so grateful. Until next time, stay well, stay savvy.